Everybody's very proud of the animal they raise. They're very proud of the crop they raise. That in turn, kind of defines a person's character sometimes.
It's the best way of living there is. I couldn't imagine raising my kids anywhere else.
No one owes me a living or any of the other of us, but we choose the life that we live.
Turning cattle into the beef you find on grocery store shelves is an intricate process that requires multiple entities working closely together. In this episode, we're going to highlight some of the steps along this journey that ensures our consumers have the safest and highest quality protein. When ranchers are ready to sell their cattle, sale barns provide an opportunity for them to earn the most money possible for their livestock. Let's start at a very basic level of how does a sale work?
So probably the most basic part of it is if, for example, if you had cattle to sell, you might call me or I might know where you live and we would come out and visit about when you were ready to sell livestock, and you would pick a date, for example, this week, and we would say, if you were going to load them on Thursday and be here the day before or bring them the morning of, we have some of both. So we would set that time up and then we would get prepared for the sale.
The buyers, where are they at? What are they going to do next with them?
The cattle from this part of the world go lots of places, early in the fall especially, when they have moisture in the south, Kansas, Oklahoma wheat fields get a lot of cattle out of this area. Eastern Nebraska feedlots get a lot of the bigger cattle. Eastern South Dakota, Iowa, Minnesota, they go all over the place.
After they're sold, livestock are sorted into pens to be picked up by the buyer.
Let's go to 510, 510, buyer 1079. And can you write that the yearlings are in 609, 609? I am in charge of making sure that the calves go into the right pens. The buyer number pops up on the screen here, and then I can tell if it has already got a pin or if I need to get a new pin for it.
We're trying to get the most dollar that we can for each and every one of those individual animals, and the auction way of doing that is true price discovery, and that's kind of what happens here.
Big good steers, big boys, they need to be 31, they need to be 31. How they need to be 31, they need to be 31, and then 1, 2, need to be 31, 2.
Several $1 million change hands, probably today several million. We have about 5,000 calves going to go through today. So
This is big business that we're talking about here.
it is, and it's very big business to the producers that bring here. This is their one day in the sun. This is the day that they've picked, and this is the day they get their income for the year. Hopefully you have a lot of competitive bidding, and that's what drives the price up when you have people that want the same livestock. So.
Johnny, 31. They need to be 31. They need a little hours to go. They need to be 21.
It's just amazing how fast this process is. You have them come in, people are bidding, they're out, and on to the next ones. A single cow produces hundreds of pounds of meat, so it's no small task to butcher its carcass to get your steaks and roasts. Wall meat processing has turned the science of butchering into an art form. They cut locally raised meat and make sure their products end up on South Dakotans' plates.
I started off cutting meat when I was a teenager in high school in actually Delaware, or the border of Delaware and Philly, a town called Chichester. And then my decision was go serve my country or stay and continue to cut meat. Well, I decided to go serve my country. After I retired and grew up from the Air Force of 30 years, I thought I would partner up with my son Glenn and buy a meat plant. How you doing, son? So at the end of this whole chain is our customers. It's really what they want to see in their product. And that's what we move towards. So in conversation with our customers and our producers, we work towards that goal. We learn more of what they want and how they want it. The end product has to be wholesome, has to be appearance of very good product, and we try to achieve that. Quality is everything.
How cattle are raised, their diets, and overall quality of life are important factors that influence the beef they create. What you might not realize, though, is that how cattle are bred trumps all of those.
We're at Blair Brothers Angus Ranch. Operation consists of my dad Rich and my uncle Ed. They were the original partners, and then they have since brought in my cousin Chad and I and our families. We're a seed stock supplier, which means we raise bulls to go on and produce offspring for the cattle industry. We use a lot of genetics, artificial insemination, very strict selection process, and that filters down through the industry to ultimately create the best eating experience for a consumer. The cattle industry, starting with, say, the sire studs, that's where you would take the top bulls in the nation and collect them. Then we use that semen to breed our cows. They're measured on EPDs, or expected progeny differences. So that is like a ranking of all the cattle in the database or in the U.S. measured against each other. And so we have a number for calving ease, we have a number for birth weight, we have a number for weaning weight, the weight that they'll be at 200 days of age, yearling weight, and we can measure ribeye size and a host of other characteristics. You know, we like a really pretty animal, thick, deep-sided, something that's going to look good. You know, you're really proud of what you do. You want to be out there and have the prettiest set of cows you can get. But some of the marbling and carcass stuff is more what you find out when the hide's off of them. That's a measurable trait. It's a trait that is fairly highly heritable, so it's something you can change. Breeding and genetics is important to the industry because we always want to be improving. Today we're producing way more pounds of beef with less number of head than we did 20 years ago. It makes us more efficient, makes our environmental impact smaller.
We produce as much beef today with half the cows that we had in 1973. You think about that. It's phenomenal, and that is a result of genetics. Cattlemen are the original environmentalists, and we have the ability to upcycle through cattle. We can take a commodity that the human race cannot consume in the form of this grass. We can turn that into beef, and we can have a positive influence on the environment.
A lion's share of it is on ground that cannot be farmed. And the only way that we're going to provide any food for our consumers and our citizens of the U.S. and the world is by being able to use the forages off of that land that isn't suitable for cultivation. In a a lot of folks don't understand that by grazing those cattle on that land, that we're actually improving the soil health and we're improving the diversity of species, and it's good for the land, it's good for the wildlife, it's good for everybody.
A cow is meant to eat grass. The environment is set up to feed a cow grass. That is our main goal. However, we're in western South Dakota where we don't have a huge growing season. So here we have, alfalfa. We put it up, peak maturity. It's cut and baled into a hay bale. And then we'll actually run it through a grinder. It makes it more digestible and more palatable for the cattle. They love to eat it. All the ingredients are then put into a feed wagon, mixer wagon, so you dump them in and it mixes it up and then distributes it out to all the cattle. We'll also put up corn silage. You chop the whole corn plant, it grinds it up, chops it. This has the plant and the cob on it. It has a lot of nutritional value, a lot of energy for the animal. They also, the rumen is a fermentation vat, so it actually produces heat, keep the animals warmer in the wintertime. We'll use a computer program. You feed test all the feed. So that'll give us a measurement for minerals, mostly protein, energy, and we can take all our feeding ingredients, whether it be corn, silage, hay. It'll kind of tell us the nutritional needs of the animal, and we can take the tests of all those feeds and plug it in and then formulate a balanced diet for the cattle.
So much care is being taken for those animals, and yes, they eventually go to the processing plant and then become food, but while they're here, they are taken care of and have a really good life.
It serves no one to abuse an animal and have a bruise in that product that we're delivering out. So the careful care of the animals and caring about how we administer the vaccines and the antibiotics that we put in there, so that we make sure that we feel good about that consumer providing that product to their children and grandchildren, and that's the way it should be.
These cattle are very well vaccinated, safe and effective vaccines. The vaccine prevents pneumonia, some other kind of bovine diseases. The vaccines are very effective, but we also end up using some antibiotics, and antibiotics are the worst word in the world. And right. People want to exploit that so much. And none of these cattle here need antibiotics. They are all happy and healthy, but once in a while, it's just like a kid getting an ear infection. Something happens, something gets sick, and if we don't give those antibiotics, you're just allowing that animal to suffer and get sick and ultimately perish. And right. I would say 98% of these haven't ever had any in their lifetime.
Right.
But with that, the ones that are given antibiotics, every single brand or type of antibiotic has what we call withdrawal period. So that is the time that it is from the time you give it to when there are absolutely no traces left in the animal. So, that's kept track of, and if that animal does go into food supply, we can be sure that there's no traces of antibiotics left in that animal.
Right, so it's not even coming into our systems.
Just science, it's all science-based and tested, and we know that there's no traces in that going into the food supply. These are a pretty neat deal. They use geothermal heat. We can get some pretty frigid temperatures around here.
Definitely.
And these are buried 6 feet in the ground.
Really?
It's a tube goes all the way down so that the geothermal's keeping that warm, keeping the heat from the ground coming up. So, we're not using any power, any electricity.
And it won't freeze.
To keep the water open, yeah.
Wow. That is fascinating.
this is a lifestyle, and people live it, breathe it, eat it. It is what it is, and they love to do it. And so there's a lot of passion put in, and so when it comes from farm to plate, you can know with confidence that those people did everything in a proper way to take care of those animals.
Why do you like being out here? Why do you like raising your family out here in western South Dakota?
Oh, we love South Dakota. You know, we have some of the best scenery around, and it'll grow a lot of good grass to run a cow, and it's a great place to live. The environment can be challenging. You know, we're out in it every single day. It doesn't matter what the temperature is. The cattle have to be taken care of and checked on, and in the winter they have to be fed, no matter if it's snowing or blowing or sunny or not.
Right.
You don't get to pick your days.
As South Dakotans, we know that winters can be tough. That's especially true for those in agriculture. But some storms, like the Atlas blizzard of 2013, are catastrophic.
The winds are increasing, the snowflakes are getting bigger, and these snowflakes are very wet, very heavy. Visibility could be zero at times out in the open prairies.
The snow covered them up and basically drowned them.
It was an event that had never happened before that I'm aware of in the history of raising cattle in the Dakotas. Our own family, when we lost about 125 cows, we were one of the lucky ones. And when we come up over that hill and we saw 100 and some cows dead, the first thought was not the economic loss. The first thought was that we had been in charge of taking care of those animals. And you can't help but think that you failed. Whether it be me or anyone else, it's like losing a family member. Myself and my family, we risk our lives trying to do the best we can to take care of them.
Our local producers do everything they can to give their cattle the best possible life and deliver the best product possible. So why isn't more of this great tasting South Dakota beef staying in South Dakota?
We have the fifth largest cattle producing state in the nation. And if you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we are one of the last to have a lot of processing in our state. We don't process enough in our state, not at all.
We just can't get our beef into the local processors fast enough. So if I call a processor and say I want to butcher my own beef because I don't have the facilities to do it, they've got all the equipment and the labor and stuff. So it's backed up so long that we're waiting a year.
When COVID hit, for the very first time in folks' lives, they saw empty shelves, especially on the meat counter. And so all of a sudden, it became very real. And so because of that, and any time that you can, the closer you can produce and process the food close to home, the more security you have. I mean, it's just common sense.
Every load of cattle that leaves this state, whether it's calves going somewhere else to be fed or backgrounded, or whether it's market-ready animals going somewhere else to get processed, that's value. That's a lot of our economy leaving the state. And so if we want to have value added, if we want to grow our economy, if we want to, do what's best for South Dakota, we got to try to add that value within our own state. And then if we do export it out of South Dakota, export that final product that everybody wants. I mean, people want beef from the best producing area in the country, and in my opinion, that's right here in South Dakota.
In 30 years in the Air Force, I've traveled all over the world. I've seen different cultures. I've seen different steaks and meats and products. Here in South Dakota, we have one of the best I've ever seen in 30 years.
South Dakota, $32.5 billion is a gross domestic product from ag. Almost a quarter of our total workforce is in ag-related jobs.
A lot of people don't even realize that.
Yeah.
You know, even myself, just hearing those numbers, it's like, wow, what a huge economic impact that has on what we do and who we are.
If agriculture isn't doing well, the folks in Deadwood don't do well, the people up in the Black Hills don't do as well as they have other years, and so it makes a big difference.
We have the resource already. I mean, sometimes
We have the raw resource.
that's the hardest thing, right? Is being able to have that.
But what we don't have is the infrastructure to get that to that end retail product. And that's tough. That takes a lot of capital investment, and we hope that the state can help us out in that. And people,
I was gonna say, entrepreneurs,
having 10 more people like Ken
Ken?
sure wouldn't hurt, because this is a tough business. I don't care what anybody says. Even if you know what you're doing, there is still a certain amount of hard physical manual labor here. It's technical skill. It's not an easy job.
You know, it's not the NFL. It's nothing very prestigious. But when you learn your job and you do it and you do the best you can, everybody that partakes in that steak is happy.
I pledged to make sure that we would end up with some kind of a program to help current processors and new processors get started to expand that capability. The governor's already pledged $5 million to bring forward expansion of meat processing, either expansion of existing facilities or to help folks get started in new facilities.
Because of this high demand for local beef, Wall Meats is constructing a second processing plant in Rapid City that is expected to open in spring 2021.
It'll almost double and maybe triple our ability to process and sell to our consumers here in South Dakota and beyond. Not only are we adding additional employees to Rapid City, but we're also adding additional inspectors that will help us get through this process. It's a win-win for all.
The choice you have as a consumer is powerful. When you make the choice to buy local meat, you help South Dakota ranchers and processors and pave the way for your friends and family to live better lives by influencing what they choose to eat. Because there's nothing better tasting than beef that's homegrown.